There is a question I hear often from people in their 60s, 70s, and even 80s. They ask me, is there anything I can still do to protect my memory? My answer is yes. There are meaningful steps you can take to support your brain. But we need to begin with an honest understanding of what those steps can and cannot do. No single exercise, food, vitamin, or supplement can guarantee that a person will never develop dementia. The brain is far too complex for that. Memory and thinking are influenced by age, genetics, cardiovascular health, sleep, hearing, emotional well-being, physical activity, medication use, and many other factors. However, this does not mean that your choices are unimportant. Your brain remains capable of responding to new experiences throughout life. When you learn an unfamiliar skill, solve a new problem, or practice a movement that requires concentration, your nervous system must adapt. Different areas of the brain begin working together, and with repetition, the task may gradually become easier. This ability is known as neuroplasticity. It does not mean that the brain can repair every type of damage. It means that the brain can continue learning and adjusting, even later in life. That is why I want to show you a series of simple hand coordination exercises today. These movements are designed to challenge your attention, working memory, sequencing, and coordination. They are not medical tests. Struggling with one of them does not mean that you have dementia. Some people find these movements difficult because of arthritis, stiffness, tremors, poor vision, reduced sensation, or simply because the movement is unfamiliar. The purpose is not to judge your brain. The purpose is to give it something new to learn. Before we begin, sit in a comfortable and stable chair. Relax your shoulders and keep both feet on the floor. If any movement causes pain, dizziness, unusual numbness, or weakness, stop immediately. Move slowly. Speed is not important at the beginning. Clean and controlled movements are much more useful than fast, careless ones. Let us begin with a simple finger sequence. Hold your right hand in front of you. Touch the tip of your thumb to the tip of your index finger. Then move the thumb to your middle finger, your ring finger, and finally your little finger. Now reverse the direction. Touch the ring finger, the middle finger, and then return to the index finger. Continue moving forward and backward through the sequence. Try not to look away. Watch each fingertip make contact with the thumb. After several repetitions, perform the same movement with your left hand. You may notice that one hand feels more coordinated than the other. That is completely normal. Most people have a dominant hand that performs detailed movements more easily. Now try the sequence with both hands at the same time. Move slowly and notice whether one hand tries to move ahead of the other. If that happens, pause and begin again. The next exercise uses two different hand positions. Place your left hand flat on your thigh with the palm facing down. Make a gentle fist with your right hand and hold it upright. Now switch both hands at the same time. Your left hand becomes a fist, and your right hand opens and lies flat. Switch again. At first, one hand may change before the other. You may also notice that both hands accidentally make the same shape. This is common when the brain is trying to coordinate two different instructions at once. Slow down until you can make each change accurately. Once the movement becomes comfortable, increase the speed slightly, but continue focusing on control. Now we are going to add a movement that crosses the center of the body. Touch the tip of your nose with your right hand. At the same time, reach your left hand across your body and gently hold your right earlobe. Release both hands and clap once. Now switch sides. Your left hand touches your nose while your right hand crosses over and holds your left ear. Release, clap, and change again. This exercise may feel surprisingly confusing. You must remember the current position of each hand while preparing both hands for the next position. Do not become frustrated if your hands move in the wrong direction. Stop, look at each hand, and reset the movement. That moment of confusion is not a failure. It simply means that the task is unfamiliar and requires your full attention. Continue slowly for several repetitions. For the next exercise, place your right hand on top of your head and begin tapping gently. At the same time, place your left hand over your abdomen and move it in a slow circular motion. One hand taps while the other hand circles. you may find that both hands begin tapping or both hands begin making circles. This happens because the brain often tries to simplify two different movements into one matching pattern. Pause and begin again. After several seconds, switch hands. Your left hand now taps your head while your right hand moves in circles over your abdomen. Keep the tapping light and the circular movement slow. There is no reason to use force. The challenge comes from asking each hand to perform a different action at the same time. Now hold both hands in front of you. On your right hand, extend your index finger and little finger while folding your middle and ring fingers toward your palm. On your left hand, extend your thumb and little finger while keeping the other fingers folded. Look carefully at both shapes. Now switch them. The right hand takes the position previously held by the left hand, and the left hand takes the position previously held by the right. This movement can be difficult, especially when the fingers are stiff. Do not force your joints into an uncomfortable position. Make the shapes as accurately as your hands comfortably allow. Once you are able to switch slowly, try saying the numbers from 1 to 10 while continuing the movement. Speaking while moving adds another layer of difficulty because the brain must divide its attention between language and coordination. The next exercise begins with a salute. Bring your right hand toward your temple in a relaxed salute position. At the same time, extend your left hand slightly forward and make a thumbs up sign. Now switch sides. Your left hand moves toward your temple, while your right hand forms a thumbs up sign. Continue changing positions. Keep the movement slow enough that you can clearly complete each shape before switching. After several accurate repetitions, try saying the days of the week while you continue. If the movement begins to fall apart, stop speaking and return to the simpler version. Then add the words again when your hands feel more controlled. Now let us return to the fingertip sequence, but make it more challenging. Hold both hands in front of you. On the right hand, begin by touching your thumb to your index finger. On the left hand, begin by touching your thumb to your little finger. Move both thumbs at the same time, but in opposite directions. The right thumb travels from the index finger toward the little finger. The left thumb travels from the little finger toward the index finger. When you reach the opposite ends, reverse the movement. This requires both hands to follow different sequences at the same time. It may take many attempts before the movement feels smooth. That is perfectly acceptable. Do not measure success by whether you perform it perfectly today. Measure success by whether you remain patient, attentive, and willing to practice. You do not need to perform all of these exercises in one session. 5 or 10 minutes is enough. Choose 2 or 3 movements and practice them several times during the week. When one exercise becomes easy, change it slightly. You might perform it more slowly. Close one eye, count backward, name animals, or say the months of the year while your hands continue moving. The goal is to prevent the exercise from becoming completely automatic. Once a task requires no attention at all, it becomes less challenging. Adding a small variation asks the brain to adjust again. But hand exercises are only one small part of protecting cognitive health. Your brain depends on the health of your entire body. Blood pressure is especially important. High blood pressure can damage the blood vessels that supply the brain, often without causing obvious symptoms. Diabetes, high cholesterol, smoking, and physical inactivity can also affect circulation over time. That is why regular medical checkups matter. You cannot manage a condition that you do not know you have. Physical movement is another important part of brain health. Walking, swimming, cycling, dancing, gardening, and strength training can support circulation, balance, mobility, mood, and sleep. The most effective form of exercise is usually one that is safe for your body and realistic enough to continue. You do not need an extreme routine. Consistency is far more important than intensity. Sleep also affects memory more than many people realize. When you are not sleeping well, your attention becomes weaker. New information is harder to retain, and familiar tasks may require more effort. If you wake up exhausted every morning, snore heavily, stop breathing during sleep, or struggle with ongoing insomnia, speak with a healthcare professional. Do not assume that poor sleep is simply something you must accept because of your age. Hearing loss can also place an additional burden on the brain when it becomes difficult to understand conversation. People often begin avoiding social situations. They may participate less, speak less, and gradually become more isolated. A hearing assessment and appropriate treatment can improve communication and help a person remain engaged with others. Social connection itself is valuable for the brain. A conversation requires attention, memory, language, emotional awareness, and the ability to respond appropriately. Spending time with friends, joining a community group, learning in a class, volunteering, or calling a family member may provide a richer mental challenge than completing the same puzzle alone every day. Nutrition matters as well, but it should be approached realistically. There is no single food that prevents dementia. A healthy eating pattern generally includes vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, nuts, and appropriate sources of protein. It also limits excessive amounts of highly processed foods, added sugar, and unhealthy fats. Be careful with supplements that promise dramatic improvements in memory. Natural does not always mean safe. Supplements may interact with prescription medication, and large doses of certain vitamins can cause harm. Always speak with your physician or pharmacist before adding a new supplement, especially if you take blood thinners, diabetes medication, blood pressure medication, or several prescriptions. It is also important to understand the difference between common forgetfulness and changes that deserve medical attention. Occasionally, forgetting where you placed your keys is common. Forgetting an appointment once in a while can happen when you are tired or distracted. More concerning signs include repeatedly asking the same question, becoming lost in a familiar place, forgetting how to perform a familiar task, making unusual financial decisions, struggling to manage medication, or experiencing memory problems that interfere with independent living. Changes in personality, judgment, language, or behavior should also be taken seriously. A sudden change in speech, strength, balance, awareness, or mental clarity requires urgent medical attention. Sudden confusion is not normal aging. When memory changes develop gradually, arrange a medical evaluation rather than trying to diagnose yourself. Many conditions can affect memory, including thyroid problems, vitamin deficiencies, medication side effects, depression, sleep disorders, infections, and hearing loss. Some of these conditions can be treated. The sooner a problem is identified, the sooner appropriate support can begin. The exercises we practice today are not a cure for dementia. They do not replace physical activity, medical care, healthy sleep, or the treatment of chronic conditions. What they can do is give your brain a brief and focused challenge. They ask you to pay attention, remember a sequence, coordinate two different actions, notice mistakes, and try again. These are useful skills at every age, so choose to exercises and practice them today. Move slowly. Be patient with yourself. Allow the movement to feel awkward before it begins to feel familiar. The goal is not to prove that your brain is perfect. The goal is to continue using it with purpose. Your age does not remove your ability to learn. Your first attempt does not determine your final ability. And a small daily challenge can be a meaningful part of a much larger plan to care for your brain, your body, and your independence.